Of course, so we begin here with our big story. That fifth group of hostages released today from Gaza with 1 day left in this temporary truce agreement. Throngs of people surrounding the hostages as they were handed over to members of the International Red Cross. You see it there. The hostages were taken to Egypt before being flown to Israeli hospitals. 30 additional Palestinian prisoners were released today as part of this exchange. Now, the total number of hostages rescued now stands at 81. 180 Palestinian prisoners have been released. It's a fragile truce, and it only continues for one more day. This as both Israel and Hamas are saying that the other has violated this ceasefire, threatening to really upend all of this progress. So just to discuss this ongoing hostage negotiations, we want to bring in Christopher O'Leary, who is a former counterterrorism hostage negotiator with the FBI, who's now the senior vice president of the operations at the Sufan Group, a global security consulting firm. Christopher, thank you so much for joining us. And first of all, I'd like to get your take here. When you hear that the IDF says Hamas detonated, things near us, and Hamas is saying that there was some kind of issue on the battlefield, it really goes to show how delicate this is. What do you make of these allegations?
Well, it's impossible to determine how true or accurate they are. I mean, first of all, Gaza is a combat zone. Having been in situations like it in Iraq and in Syria and Afghanistan, there's unexploded ordnance. There are unilateral actors that may not be following the direct orders of Hamas. There might be local Gazan citizens who just have a grievance because their home was destroyed. So keeping this truce, this ceasefire intact has been a challenge every day for both sides. And then also importantly, Hamas does not control Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is a separate terrorist organization inside of Gaza. So it is very difficult or fragile to keep this intact moving forward.
Certainly. And as you know, today we saw a group, it was a number really of senior citizens that were released, along with a 17-year-old. They were the ones released from Hamas. And we have just one more day before this current truce expires. And there's still a handful of children that are suspected to be among these hostages held by Hamas. You have to imagine that they are now a top priority in these negotiations. How will Israel bargain for their lives?
Well, I think the criticality of having the Qataris involved in this, they are a very progressive, very westernized Arab nation that also has kept their cultural roots, if that makes any sense. So they are able to bridge the divide between Israel and Hamas and the United States and the rest of the global community. The reason I highlight that is because within the Arab community, they really do value and care for their women, mothers in particular, and children. So I do think the truce could get extended, and I think we will see most, if not all, of the women and children released.
Well, that is certainly a hopeful thought. We know throughout these negotiations, we have seen Israel give up really a disproportionate number of Palestinian prisoners compared to the number of hostages that they're getting back. So what's going to happen to these negotiations if and when the only remaining hostages are men?
Yeah, so you highlight what the biggest concern is moving forward. I do think we can probably, with all the support from the administration and having Director Burns and Secretary of State Blinken going back over here shortly, I think the truce can likely get extended for a few more days. But at a certain point, there's a decision point for both sides. For both Hamas, they are not going to likely give up all of their hostages. They're going to hold on to the IDF members for sure. They might hold on to foreign nationals who are males. Americans are worth more. Western Europeans are worth more than other hostages. But this is their power, their leverage, their human shields against an all-out Israeli invasion. So what is going to be needed is parallel lines of effort to start getting back to a more counterterrorism-focused approach, which will help dismantle Hamas, gather valuable intelligence that might lead to where those hostages are, and open opportunities for hostage rescue operations in the future.
A potential rescue operation. And so let's talk about these Americans right now. Right now, the U.S. government hasn't been able to really give a status on the remaining American hostages. How committed will the Biden administration continue to be if they aren't able to get an update on the status of those hostages?
Well, having the director of the CIA, who is a consummate diplomat and professional, who is also now an intelligence professional over there, who knows the region, actually speaks the language, he is incredibly effective over there. But he's only representative of the administration all the way up the chain. I've had the privilege of working with the National Security Council, and the Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, my friend and colleague Roger Carstens, and I will tell you they are using all the tools in their toolbox to free the Americans. And the United States, like Israel, actually, we will dedicate every resource that we have in a whole-of-government approach for as long as it takes to recover our hostages. We are incredibly committed to that and very effective at it over the years as well.
All right, Christopher O'Leary, thank you for your insight and expertise on this issue. I want to bring this story now to our big panel. So joining us today is our ABC News contributor and Sirius XM radio host Mike Muse, along with ABC News contributor and former New York Republican Congressman John Katko, and Democratic strategist Julie Rodzinski, and ABC News contributor and former Navy SEAL Commander Eric Ulrich is back with us as well. So thank you all for being here. Mike, let's start here with you. In the past few weeks, we really saw an incredible public outcry from around the world calling for a ceasefire, but then also within Israel, we saw these people urging Netanyahu to focus on bringing these hostages home. The public really does have a voice in the course of this war. How do you see this playing out?
Yes, and not the public here just in America, but also the public here in Israel. The people of Israel are putting lots of pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in order to continue these pauses and this truce in order to free all the hostages. As we begin to slowly do these one-time extensions, over time, the delicate balance of the mistrust only grows stronger, which could ruin any chance of possibility to get any hostages back into Israel. So that is a strong growing concern for that. And the larger narrative of that is also, too, is what is the ultimate end game for Israel as they begin to, what they say is to get the ground offensive going after this truce is over, as what is it going to be the cost of innocent Palestinians who are becoming casualties of this war as they try to eliminate Hamas, which is growing more in popularity within the Gazan people as their Palestinians are freed as well.
Yes, and disproportionately freed, as we know. It's a 3-to-1 situation right now. So, John, let's take that to you. Israel says, they're using these days and this pause to strengthen their readiness. They're preparing to continue fighting when this truce ends. So how does the Biden administration walk the line there of supporting Israel as they do that when this fighting resumes?
Well, this is a three-dimensional chess game on all sides. For Israel, there's tremendous pressure to bring the hostages home, and they're executing that plan to get as many home as possible. They run the risk of, when they do that, of giving Hamas time to get out of Gaza and escape Gaza, live to fight another day, and harm Israel more going forward. That's a problem. And for Hamas, the problem they have is there's a finite number of hostages. If they give away all the hostages, which I don't think they will, but if they do, what prevents Israel from just going full out at them? So there's a balance there. And for the United States, our options are to put pressure on both parties to get all the hostages out and to try and get a ceasefire. I don't think anyone's going to accomplish all their goals. And I suspect, sadly, that this is going to drag on for quite some time.
And Julie, we know the Biden administration is also seeing a big backlash from the Arab community here in the United States over their support for Israel in this conflict. Is that becoming an issue for them?
Well, it's certainly something they have to keep an eye on, certainly in places like Michigan, where the president has a vested stake in ensuring that he does well there next year. There's a very sizable Arab population that's concerned about what's happening in Gaza. But I will say, I think the president is prosecuting this war or his role in it in a way that's probably with a little bit of a mind towards politics, but more with a mind towards policy. We've seen that because he's been staunchly standing by Benjamin Netanyahu, with whom he's famously not had the warmest relationship over the course of the last 40 years. But nevertheless, he did fly to Israel. Let's not forget also that Joe Biden's ratings in Israel today are through the roof in a way that their own prime ministers are not. So he has to also be mindful of the fact that he has more influence in some ways over Israeli policy today than even their own prime minister might. And that's something he has to think about as well. So I appreciate the whole point about this being a three-dimensional chess match. It certainly is. And this is something the president has to keep an eye on not just with respect to the message that he's sending to players in Israel and in Gaza, but also to players around the Middle East, and even to players like China and Russia, which of course have a very vested interest, and Iran, as to what happens here, both politically for us domestically and also certainly with respect to international relations.
Certainly, all eyes from the region are on the president, and all eyes on the world are on the president right now. So, Eric, we know these hostages, they face a long road before they can actually return to their normal lives, if they can at all. First of all, tell us a little bit about the recovery process and what it is like for these hostages that have now been released. But then also, what kind of information could we learn from them, and could the IDF learn from them? And do you think that a potential hostage rescue could actually play out?
And the hostages are a valuable tool when it comes to getting more awareness about how they were held captive, if they have any ideas about where they were held captive, the conditions that they were in, and the things that they observed. And the IDF planners can talk to the hostages, gain some of that information, try to piece it together, and then it will be additive when it comes to future operations down the road. As far as their recovery, obviously there's physical recovery, but more importantly, there's a psychological recovery. And that psychological recovery, it's a traumatic, violent event that being taken into captivity and then being held against your will, the things that they are subjected to, it very well could take them years before they're psychologically back on solid ground.
Absolutely. As you were talking about that, we were showing video of Abigail, who's now turned 4 and has to live with the reality that her parents were killed trying to protect her. It's an unbelievable reality for such a young girl.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.